What's going on, nerds? Let's talk about Absolute Batman #1, because this is not just another alternate universe remix, it's a full-scale reinvention. And from page one, it makes that clear. So I want to go through a little bit of what the Absolute Universe is, what it is to me, and how it's brought me full-fledged back into comic books from a big hiatus. So first off, I'm a huge comic fan, and I've been a huge comic fan for the majority of my life, starting reading my dad's books from when I'm probably around 6, 7 years old. Read a lot of DC, Marvel, a lot of Silver Age comics in the 90s, and mostly the 80s, actually, when I first started reading, and then became a reader on my own in the 90s. Growing up, I was definitely a huge Marvel kid, as most kids in the 80s and 90s were. As you know, Spider-Man and the X-Men were all the rage in the late 80s and early 90s, so it was very hard for you to be a comic book fan and not be knee-deep in those books. As time went on, for various reasons, life got in the way, and also, comic books got convoluted with reboots and restarts and crossovers and marketing gimmicks, and just quality overall of books kind of fell there, in my opinion, in the late 90s, early 2000s. And although I did read things from time to time, for the most part, me being an avid comic book reader fell off, and I was no longer going weekly and having pulls, and kind of stepped away from comic books and recently got back in after probably almost 10 years away from books. I was never completely out of the scene. I did read things from time to time that piqued my interest. I actually did tap back into the New 52 for a little while, and then kind of fell off a little bit there myself, mostly for personal reasons, not necessarily for the quality reasons, although overall the New 52 I thought was pretty flawed. I did like some stuff about it, and one of the things I did love was Scott Snyder and Batman. Being a huge comic book fan, from the 80s and 90s, I was always a big Transformers and G.I. Joe fan, and I read The Walking Dead throughout the entire run. So when Robert Kirkman relaunched Transformers and G.I. Joe in the Energon universe with his Skybound imprint, I did get back into comic books a few years ago, but I was strictly reading Transformers and G.I. Joe and Void Rivals and nothing else. My longtime friend and local LCS owner, Jim Ye, had been telling me about Absolute Batman, as well as my brother, who is a big comic book fan and still kind of reads Spider-Man and Batman. Both told me about Absolute Batman and what was happening, but I honestly just didn't really give it a time of day. I just thought it was going to be some type of Ultimate Universe ripoff, or it just didn't seem to appeal to me. I didn't necessarily want to get into it. And even the promo images, I have to say, at the time when I first saw them, I was kind of like, it just seemed so exaggerated. I honestly did not see what I do now see as absolute mythological awesomeness. It definitely did not strike me when it first was presented to me as something I'd be interested in. After months and months of my friend compelling me to read it, I finally broke in and I bought the first 4 or 5 issues of Absolute Batman. I think it's The Zoo is the first story arc there, the first 5 issues. And literally by book 3, I texted him and I said, put this on my pull list. Also add Absolute Wonder Woman and Absolute Superman and anything else that's Absolute to my pull list immediately. The first issue really pulled me in, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I have to say, I've been enjoying it ever since. And I like just about everything that's been happening with the Absolute Universe, and not just the actual stories, art, but what seems to be, and I don't have insider information because I am not friends with any of these creators, I am just a fan, but what seems to be a very overarching and strategic plan on how they're distributing these Absolute books. The irony of the Absolute Universe really is the fact that it is similar to what Marvel had done with the Ultimate Universe years ago, when the Marvel movies were very popular in their inception. You had the X-Men movies and Spider-Man. Marvel was trying to get readers into Marvel Comics and launch the Ultimate Universe, which, kind of mirrored what was going on in movies. Ironically enough, the MCU wound up mirroring what was happening in the Ultimate Universe, where, art imitates art. It was pretty funny. That being said, one of the things about the Ultimate Universe that they didn't get right was trying to stay away from the convoluted nonsense that is normal continuity. And over time, the Ultimate Universe really became stale and uninteresting, and they ended it. And it had a few holdovers from the original Ultimate Universe that were really great, like Miles Morales, and brought that into their main line, but ultimately killed that line because it suffered from a lot of the same things that the regular Marvel Universe did as well. So as you can tell, when they originally launched the Absolute Universe, I was kind of jaded by what had happened with the Ultimate Universe, because I was kind of all in on the Ultimate Universe there for a while. And then when that ended, I just wasn't interested in kind of other continuities, although I love comic books. I love Elseworlds. I love variations of characters. I'll never be someone that'll tell you that I could only read mainline stuff. So honestly, I just kind of was jaded with the Ultimate Universe, and I just wasn't feeling the Absolute Universe because of that. But that was wrong. I should have gave it a shot early out the gate because I am loving these books. So back to the irony of the Ultimate Universe and Marvel, to me, and I don't know if this is the plan or how this Absolute Universe came about, but to me, so the in-canon origin of the Absolute Universe is that it is created by Darkseid himself, who merged with the Spectre and became basically a godlike being where he can create universes, and creates a universe where the basic mold and the fabric and the atomic levels of that universe are all drawn from chaos and evil energy. So for the most part, nothing is really geared towards the heroes having an advantage. Why that's so different for the DC universe is, the DC universe is more of a mythological and classic superhero retelling. Like, you have all these larger than life characters. Most of them are they're perfect. They're paragons. You have Superman and Wonder Woman and Batman. They're the epitome of the human race or an alien race or just those characters in general are akin to what, we in real life would call mythological gods. They're like modern day mythological beings. Whereas in the Marvel universe, you have characters that are inherently flawed. You have Spider-Man that's always broke. You have Hulk that has anger issues. You have Captain America who's out of time. You have Iron Man who's dealing with addiction. Every character has these imperfect flaws. They almost deal with more human and realistic grounded things, where the DC universe characters tend to be more perfect. It's probably why as a kid, the Marvel Universe was more appealing to me. And as I grew up, I liked, the DC characters more and more as I read and got exposed to those stories more and more. I definitely leaned more towards DC as an older adult. But as a kid, you like that. And I still do love those things about the Marvel characters and their flaws. So back to my original point is, to me, ironically, the Absolute Universe feels like what if DC characters were created in the Marvel Universe. And I know publicly they say they wanted it to be more of a realistic universe where things don't necessarily always work out, where there's tough consequences. And yes, the Absolute Universe definitely has a more of a realistic, grounded approach when it comes to that. But for the most part, it feels like they exist in the Marvel Universe. And I don't know if that's just a hot take from me, but that's what it is. So I kind of want to cover, I'm going to cover Absolute Batman #1. And I know there's plenty of people that review comic books issue by issue that do a much better job than I will be doing. I'm not looking to, steal those people's thunder. I'll never be able to fill those people's shoes. They are fantastic. I view those YouTubers all the time, but I love the Absolute Universe so much. I really wanted to kind of make a video about it and also talk about Absolute Batman. And I'm going to go over the first issue and just, what I see as a difference in this version of Batman versus other versions of Batman. All right, so let's get into this. Absolute Batman #1, written by Scott Snyder, drawn by Nick Dragotta, a fantastic creative team. I'm familiar with Nick Dragotta from past projects. I've seen him do stuff, and I love that Scott Snyder picked him, or DC picked him to be the artist on this book. It's definitely compelling. It's bombastic. It really does 100% inform, what I think is obviously Scott Snyder's vision for this version of Batman. So we see now here that we have Bruce's origin set in a firmly contemporary style Gotham. This is not necessarily your gothic Gotham that we have in the past. The first page opens up with the young Bruce. He's in the Gotham Zoo with his class. You don't know who that is with them. We find out soon later in the story that is his father. Of course, you have the splash page with the silhouette of the handgun, and that kind of sets the tone that that there's going to be tragedy ahead. The title page alone tells you this tragedy is still the axis of Bruce's life, but this version is going to approach it very differently. I like the way that Nick Dragotta filters those flashback pages, so it's definitely something that's going on in the past, and we come to the modern day, you have a much cleaner version of what's going on. After that title page, we jump to modern day. A motorcycle crosses into the Gotham City limits. Who is this rider? We don't know at first, but then we discover that this is Alfred Pennyworth, and immediately you know this isn't the classic butler that we're used to. He's been away from Gotham for some time, and he notices the changes, the decay, the escalation of violence. At first you don't realize that it's Alfred, so there's some subversion here. Is this Bruce driving through, having this monologue? You're not exactly sure who it is until you realize that it is Alfred. He enters his place, where it's more of a stock safe house filled with weapons and tactical supplies than it is an apartment. And you can tell very quickly that this Alfred is some type of operative. He references an assignment in Singapore. He reports to a mysterious organization. And what I like in this is that he calls himself a servant, which is kind of cool because obviously we know Alfred best as a butler. And this Alfred is still serving a higher power. He's just not the one that we're used to. Subversion is all over this book. As he sits down, he's briefed on a hyper-violent gang called the Party Animals and is told his assignment is observation only. He's also informed about a vigilante figure operating in Gotham, and we knew who that is once we see that little video of a bat-like creature. It's absolute Batman. And in one of the funniest grounding moments of the issue, Alfred's motorcycle gets stolen almost immediately after he arrives. Welcome back to Gotham, Alfred. The book cuts to Croc's gym. And not the Croc that we know. This is a different Killer Croc. But first, before we meet Croc, we see a lean man who is pounding the heavy bag with surgical intensity. And you assume, again, this is Bruce. And once again, it is not. And Bruce enters. And he is massive. Broad, towering, built like a truck. This is not the sleek ninja-style Batman that we're used to. This Bruce is imposing, physically overwhelming. And you can tell this man is mad. As he pounds the bag, the sound design practically echoes off the page. Each hit feels explosive. And the memory creeps in. The zoo, his father, the gunshot, the rhythm of his punches syncs with the trauma until he smashes right through that heavy bag. Like I said, this is an angry, angry Batman. Way different than the Batman we know. And that's the thesis of this Batman. He doesn't internalize quietly. He breaks things. And back to the namesake of Croc's gym, we meet Waylon Jones. Yep. Killer Croc in the mainline universe, but here he's Bruce's childhood friend, and he's not alone. We see that he's friends with Harvey Dent, Oswald Cobblepot, Edward Nygma, and Selina Kyle. Every one of them reimagined as part of Bruce's early life cycle. It completely reframes Gotham as we knew it and Gotham's future. Just a sidebar, I really, really, really appreciate this version of what Scott Snyder is doing, making what we know as Batman's Rogues Gallery actually Bruce's childhood friends, like a bunch of Goonies or a ragtag group of friends that just grew up together in the streets of Gotham. And you can tell that these characters, well, at least later on in the books, but for right now, you can tell that Waylon Jones is someone who's actually concerned with the well-being of Gotham and people in Gotham. It's a lot different than what we're used to. Again, more subversion. You don't know what to expect. Then we cut to a yacht. Roman Sionis, as we know as the Black Mask, is meeting with crime bosses Marconi and Falcone. They're questioning the chaos caused by the party animals that clearly work for Roman Sionisky. So what does Roman do? He responds by killing them. I love this. I love how this happened. I love that the Black Mask comes in and he's taking out all of his competition and just absolutely causing chaos. After the massacre on the yacht, we see Batman getting suited up as well as news footage of other things that are going on with the party animals as they are just ruthlessly destroying people and killing people in Gotham, causing the police to be completely ineffective and just absolutely terrifying the citizens of Gotham. The gang prepares to ambush a town council meeting where citizens are demanding answers about the violence and lack of police presence. Alfred is told explicitly, do not interfere. We meet this absolute version of Jim Gordon, and he is the mayor, not the police commissioner, but he has been a police officer in the past. We also see Waylon Jones up there, Selina Kyle, and other characters in this council meeting. Everybody begging and pleading for something to be done. The party animals are absolutely running rampant on Gotham. Just as Mayor Gordon tries to settle down the crowd, the party animals storm the building. Automatic weapons, no fear, no hesitation. They don't care. They do not care. They will kill police officers, anybody that stands in their way. They fire on Gordon, and just before it becomes a massacre, Batman appears in one of the most badass scenes that I think I can remember Batman ever being in. Just as the party animals look like they're about to open fire on the rest of the citizens of Gotham, Batman yanks them out of the building and slams the door shut. The police are starting to look like they're going to rush out the building as if they're going to help. And Batman peeks through the door and says, whatever you hear, you do not open this door. He slams the door shut and violence ensues. Another one of my great moments here is when Alfred is commanded to engage Batman in the event that he sees Batman disrupting the party animals. When Alfred acknowledges his commands, he then closes his eyes. So yeah, he doesn't see anything, so he can't engage. And here's where it gets so much fun. Batman just absolutely tears apart the party animals. One of the things I love is you start to see how this Batman's technology differs from our mainline version of Bruce. And what I'm going to go into here is you have to remember that we're finding out that this version of Bruce is not the rich philanthropist that mainline Bruce is. This is a average blue collar version of Batman who is just fueled by anger and revenge. I love that the cape here on Batman works like actual bat wings. So they work like having other arms. It can grab people, throw people. He can use it to vault over people. It's just so much fun. Alfred just loves observing and seeing and diagnosing what this Batman is doing. His narration over Bruce's fight is fantastic. He says, "You're fast, steady, above all focused. You've been waiting for this, haven't you?" "Yeah, you have. You trained too. Mixed martial arts. Your own blend. Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but you're a striker above all. Brutal, yet precise. You're putting on a show. A leg stomped on so everyone hears the crack. An arm snapped over your knee, sending a message. You're enjoying it too. And the knife work, my lord. So bloody, yet you miss every artery by just enough. No fatalities at all, not one. So an idealist? Bloody hell." I love how he points out that this Bruce is putting on a show, making sure that other people fear him, see what he's capable of doing without having to take a life. He will rule through fear one way or another, whether that's respect or just absolutely terrifying the heck out of his enemies. Then we get the big moment we've all been waiting for. One of the party animals brandishes a huge cleaver. This is probably a bigger cleaver than I've ever seen. And then Batman, he shows him, he one-ups him, and he takes that big, giant bat symbol on his chest, and you see that that is a battle axe for this Bruce to utilize against his foes. Not gonna lie, before I read Absolute Batman, I thought that was really corny. Yeah, it was completely wrong. Scott Snyder, you are the man. The Bat Battle Axe is probably one of the coolest things I've seen in a Batman story in years. Batman hacks this guy's hand off immediately, sending the cleaver in his hand far across the battlefield. So another quick note, and something that I think that is very interesting about this Batman, and we're going to find once we see this montage from Alfred in a moment, is he booby-traps Gotham. As a matter of fact, he's booby-trapped a lot of Gotham. This Batman is an engineer. It's someone that's definitely taken his job as Batman a lot differently than mainline Bruce Wayne. He's taken his time to turn Gotham itself into part of his Batsuit. I think that is ingenious. Having all these different inventive ways to use the Batsuit, and we've seen millions of versions of the Batsuits. We've seen all the Bat tech, all the Bat gadgets in the world, yet Scott Snyder is still able to come up with some really cool ways and inventive ways for this version of Batman to be different than other versions. Chef's kiss. So after Batman defeats the party animals, Alfred decides that he's actually going to engage Batman. Yeah, and that doesn't go over too well for Alfred. With all of his operative skills, Batman quickly takes him out, takes his weapon, and disappears. This next part is really great. This is when we see another narrated montage from Alfred. Like I said before, he pieces it all together. He knows that Bruce is Batman. He reconstructs the origin. He identifies the emotional vulnerability that Bruce has, and we discover that Bruce's mother is alive. That this version of Bruce has only lost Thomas Wayne, and Martha's still alive. He's lived his life growing up in the city with a single mom. Just another change to his character that really brings a brilliant perspective to this. We find out that Bruce is an engineer. And again, I mentioned before, he builds traps throughout Gotham, environmental countermeasures, urban defense systems embedded in the city itself. Like I said, Batman isn't just a man in a suit. He is a network. He's absolutely built himself and embedded himself into Gotham. It's absolutely brilliant. Alfred follows him all the way to a lair that's perched atop a skyscraper. We find that Bruce is utilizing the tops of these skyscrapers as his Bat Cave or his belfry, a lot different than our mainline Batman, but all these vacant and abandoned skyscrapers have become little headquarters for Bruce, and this is where he's basically watching Gotham and starting to stalk the night. Some more subversion here as Alfred tries to take Bruce down, and Bruce points Alfred's own shotgun at him that he stole when they met at the town council earlier. You know, Bruce says, "Give me the gun. You're no killer," because Alfred's already diagnosed that this Batman's an idealist, and then boom, Bruce shoots him right in the face. He then jumps on the motorcycle, which apparently he's the one who stole that motorcycle earlier in the issue, which is hilarious, and yet another subversion, thinking it was a criminal. And you know that now Bruce has been watching Alfred the whole time. Not only does he know that Alfred's been out there from the start, he knew that Alfred was watching him. This Bruce is just as smart and as cunning, if not more, than mainline Bruce. We also find that Alfred survived the blast because our idealist Batman here converted his weapon to be non-lethal, and small little bat-shaped spikes are sticking out of Alfred's face. So yeah, that ends the issue, but there is an awesome epilogue. We find out that the person that Alfred was tracking before he came to Gotham was none other than the Joker. But this is not the Joker that we know, just like this is not the Batman that we knew. So this Batman grew up poor in the streets of Gotham. Well, we now have our wealthy philanthropist entrepreneur character in this Batman, and that is now the Joker. He's rich beyond means and definitely deadly. The pilots of the helicopter that are transporting the Joker are having a conversation talking about how to behave in front of this wealthy individual. One of the pilots is being a little jovial about the situation, and then he is warned, don't do that, don't joke. Why? He didn't hear the guy never laughs, not at anything ever. That's why they call him the Joker. Yet another subversion in this absolute universe. So we have a rich philanthropist Joker who has the means to do whatever he wants and probably murder whoever he wants. So we have a poor blue-collar Batman. It really sets the place for a completely different version of Batman. Nothing that I was expecting. It's flipping class dynamics, relationships, power structures. You know, we have Alfred as a handler, Gordon's the mayor, villains, childhood friends, Joker's the establishment, Batman is the outsider. And most importantly, this Batman is raw. He's bigger, louder, more physically dominant, but emotionally, he's still the boy at the zoo. He's haunted by the gunshot, echoing through his life. Every strike he hits is another loud gunshot echoing in his ears. And I think that's what makes this reinvention work, because no matter how much you change the world around him, Bruce Wayne is still chasing the sound of that shot. It seems like Snyder's whole approach to the absolute line seems to be keep the emotional truth and change the structure. Doesn't seem like he's just remixing character, that he's rearranging power. Absolute Gotham is politically unstable. Institutional trust is eroded. Police response is weak. And Snyder's Batman here feels closer to a siege engine than a shadow. Nick Dragotta's kinetic art style amplifies that physicality. It's less gothic elegance and more raw impact. Where mainline Bruce used inherited wealth, absolute Bruce uses earned skill and fierce brute strength. I'm hoping that they keep continuing to strip these characters to their core themes, remove the inherited scaffolding, rebuild from emotional first principles. You know, don't do nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. You know, keep the deconstruction and the reconstruction. Absolute Batman isn't trying to replace the mainline version. It's asking, what if Batman emerged today in a harsher, more openly violent Gotham without generational wealth as a safety net? Hopefully DC and Snyder keep these books streamlined and don't start convoluted with big gimmicks. That's what really started to ruin other comics and just got things too convoluted. So yeah, I'm into it. We have a bigger, angrier, working class Batman. And I think that this version of Batman is someone I can resonate with and I can empathize with, which is different than the wealthy, rich philanthropist version of Bruce. Well, all right, nerds, I hope you enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed Absolute Batman #1. Let me know what you liked about Absolute Batman #1 in the comments below. Please like this, comment, share, anything you can do to help. I would appreciate it. Alrighty, I'll talk to you soon, nerds.